Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're going to be recapping 20 generations of our Chinese parents Let's Play in just 20 minutes. But before we jump in, let me first introduce the game for those of you who are new to the channel or to the game Chinese Parents. Chinese Parents is a Chinese child-rearing simulator filled with memes and childhood memories. The gameplay is very simple, as each turn features a puzzle to earn attribute points for your child, and the decision on how to schedule your child's time as you split them between studying, playing, or dating until they grow up to take their college entrance exam, or Gaokao, at which point your child's life flashes before your eyes as they head off to college, get a job, get married, and become parents for the next generation of the gameplay, where all these attribute points you have collected so far are passed on to your child, and off you go again for another round of gameplay. Now, this game was officially released in September of 2019, and we covered it last year as we played through 20 generations of the game before we finally took a break, as I wanted to wait to see if the developer would maybe update the game to add more career tracks or dating options. But it's been a few months since then, and the only update we have seen so far is support for Japanese language. And with Chinese New Year coming up in less than 10 days, I felt it's time to blow off the dust on this little gem and launch a mini-series for the game on the channel in celebration of Chinese New Year. So this is the reason why we're doing this recap, because I realize that not everyone wants to go back and watch all 75 episodes of our past 20 generations, which is in a playlist linked below. And for those of you who are awesome enough to have seen those Let's Plays already, it might have been a while, so a quick recap of our family history never hurt anyone. So let's not waste any more time and jump into this. Now, our family started out with a baby girl named Sun Ren, and for those of you who are familiar with the channel, we mainly feature Total War 3 Kingdom content or 3 Kingdom historical content, so for a lot of these names, they're going to be referring to historical characters from 3 Kingdoms, and we switched up things a little bit in between, and we'll cover the history background of these characters as we talk about it here. So Sun Ren, being the daughter of Sun Jian and the future wife of Liu Bei, was the pick we decided to go with since we got a daughter on our first generation. But because she was our first generation, I didn't know how to play the game yet, so we were slugging along with both attribute points as well as our career path, and we ended up only scoring 548 on our Gaokao exam, and we ended up at Donghua University. And because we were so scattered with what we picked in terms of career choices, we ended up with only tier 1 in business, where we became a peddler. Not the greatest career, but it pays well because business pays you cash. We get 80 RMB of allowance for our future generation, as well as some stat boost. And in terms of love life, we tried to date around. We dated a man called Zero Hour. He was our classmate from middle school. We got to 50% success chance with him. Now in the game, it maxes out at 80, but at 50 we chose him and we failed. So we ended up single, but we married a generic dad and had our next generation of kids, who turned out to be Liu Ado. Now, of course, Liu Ado wasn't Sun Ren's official son in history, but since Sun Ren married Liu Bei and Liu Ado was Liu Bei's only son, we can pass along here in game. Now, Liu Ado did even worse than Sun Ren. He only scored 539 on his Gaokao exam, got into Beijing Forestry University, which is okay. He went the path of an e-sport career, which I guess your Gaokao score wouldn't matter here, and he did fairly well here. As you can see, he progressed to the 5th tier, or the penultimate tier in the career path. We didn't unlock the last one, but he got paid 100 RMB per turn for the next generation as an esports celebrity. That went quite well. And we found out that dating for a guy was actually more difficult, but because we focused on dating a bit more, because we knew how to play the game now, we ended up flirting pretty well with Marilyn C, who was working as a spiritual guru on TV later on. She was our middle school friend. All these girls are going to be our middle school friend. And we had a success chance of 80, and it hit. We had a successful marriage, so she provided some extra attribute point. So our next generation kid started out with a small head start, and that kid turned out to be Liu Xiang. Now, Liu Xiang obviously is not a 3 Kingdoms character, because at this time we wanted to go down a sport career. So we found a character name that resembled that, and Liu Xiang was the hurdles Olympian for China, who was the first one to win China a gold medal in track and field at the Olympics. So we decided to honor him with the name here. Now obviously because we focused on sports or the constitution attribute in the game, we ended up with a very low score on Gaokao, 487, and got into Qingdao University of Technology, but we did fairly well with our sport career. Now at this point our passive attribute gains are still quite low since it's still an early generation run. You build things up and become better and better, so we didn't max out our sport career. We ended up only becoming a national games champion, and sport career doesn't pay well, only 50 RMB for our next generation. But still, I feel like this was a pretty good historical run. Liu Xiang, even though he got the gold medal in the Athens Olympic, he was forced to retire during the following Olympic due to injury, which is a bit sad. So leaving a little bit of regret here in the sport career is something that would match our character quite nicely. Now, in terms of love life, things continue to go pretty well when we dated. Ina Tang gave us an 80% success chance, but 80% isn't 100 because you cannot max it, and we failed, which was really shocking at the time because I thought 80% super high. Who knew this game was like XCOM and you can miss, a headshot at 95%. So we failed and became 单身狗, or the singles dog, as you can see here. So we had a generic wife, a new kid with less stats. And that new kid is Liu Liu. Now, we were kind of lost in terms of giving names at this point. We were trying to keep the surname of our previous generation, so we kind of just went with a cute name here. And Liu Liu here became a ninja career, which is one of those, new cool careers in the game. And we scored fairly well as we focused on all sorts of stats. 578, we got into Huazhong Agricultural University, and then we mastered the way of the ninja as we became the reincarnation of Atari Hanzo. And for those of us who have played Shogun 2, you would know what clan this belongs to, and you get 60 RMB for your future generation, which turned out quite nice. And since our father failed at max success chance, we kind of stopped believing in love in this generation, so we almost didn't date at all. And we ended up with only 26% on Yuri Tin, who was an artist, and we obviously failed at 26%. So our child then became Diao Chan as we returned to the historical ways. Now Diao Chan being the fictional adopted daughter of Wang Yun and the girl who split apart Lü Bu and Dong Zhuo's alliance, is quite known for her singing and dancing, so obviously we went with the singer career in the game. And her Gaokao score was quite nice, 610, the highest so far in the family, and she got into Xi'an Jiaotong University, which is also kind of serendipitous as Diao Chan was famous for her act of splitting up Dong Zhuo and Lü Bu in Chang'an. And guess what? Xi'an turns out to be Chang'an, as the name has changed throughout the course of history. So the fact that Diao Chan got into Xi'an Jiaotong University makes this very, very cool. Now, our senior career was very hard to max out because we had to be popular, which is a unique attribute stat that was very hard for us to gather at this early stage of our generation, only the 5th one. So we only got to an indie musician, which is still pretty decent compared to all the ones we have been getting so far, as we give 80 RMB to our next generation. And Diao Chan's dating life also went fairly well, as the girls have a much easier time to date in this game compared to the guys, and she dated a gentleman called Yates Long who was also into music and maxed it out at 80% success rate and also landed in a marriage. So good news for our next generation. And our next generation happens to be Zilong. Now we did a little play on word here, as Yates Long, the father, gave his name to Zilong, who technically represents Zhao Yun or Zhao Zilong as his style name. So Zhao Yun here continued the good tradition of his mother by scoring quite high, 617. And the connections with Three Kingdom continues. If Diao Chan was known in history for her acts in Chang'an and she went to Xi'an, here Zilong, who obviously followed Liu Bei all the way into the land of Shuba, or forming the kingdom of Shuhan. That was obviously in Chengdu, which is the capital of the Sichuan province. And here we have Sichuan University, where Zilong went. So another very cool connection between what we named our child and what university he got into. And this obviously cannot be planned, and it's quite interesting. Now, Zilong here went the route of an online celebrity. Surprise, surprise. And he was very successful at it, and he got 120 RMB for our future generation, and this is the highest in the game as he became a well-known internet celebrity. And his love life was unfortunately not so great. Dating for the guys are very difficult in the game, as you have to answer these questions that have a tier rank system that's just very hard to find the right answer to. We only got 51% with Henrietta, and we failed that marriage. And since Zhao Yun's surname is technically Zhao, we found a historical character in Lady Zhao, or Zhao Furen, who was a concubine for Sun Quan. And Zhao Furen was well known in history as a painter. She painted a lot of map and scenery for Sun Quan, and that's how she earned his love. So we focused on art in this generation, and we got 545 on our test score, which is obviously a bit lower since we had 600s in our last two generations because she mainly focused on art. She went to the Central University of Finance and Economics, which seems to be a weird school to go to for art, but you ended up with the maximum art career here as she was an artist. But unfortunately, artists don't pay, and we only get 60 for our next generation. Now, on her love life front, it's a bit unfortunate, even though it's very easy for girls to date and max out the success chance, and we did that with Matt Chi, who is the media director of an art company, which is quite fitting for our art career, but he turned us down, even though it was 80%, and we end up failing in terms of love in this generation, so another heartbreak here. And our next generation, we went with Mi Zhu, so we jumped around with the last name since she might have a random husband, and we picked a very rich guy from Three Kingdom. Mi Zhu was a well-known landlord and owned a lot of land and was very rich. So we wanted to re-tackle the business career from our first generation where we only got the peddler. So here, we kind of know how to play the game ready in Generation 8. We got 612 on our score. We went to Nankai University, which is a great university, and we ended up being the god of investment, and that pays 100 RMB a turn. Now, this is still not the maximum one, so eventually we're going to have to come back here. And in terms of love life, we barely tried because our last generation was once again an 80% heartbreak generation, and we end up dating Phoebe Liu with only 26%, and obviously we failed with that. So we move on to the next generation, where we were set on trying out the Chinese cuisine career. So in terms of name, we went with Ando. And Ando here represents Ando Momofuku, which is the inventor of instant ramen. So that's why we kind of made that connection here with Chinese cuisine, and we have a Gaokao score of 638. He did fairly well. These scores are going to climb as our generation number climb because we have great passive attributes from previous generation being added in. He went to Zhejiang University and eventually became the state banquet head chef, which is quite nice. 100 RMB generation as allowance for our next generation. And on the love life front, we actually tried with Phoebe Liu again this time, like father, like son, I guess, 78%. So we didn't max it out. So anywhere between 80 and 100 would equal 80. We got to near optimum by giving 78% here, and it worked. We actually ended up with a marriage here. And the resulting kid for our generation 10 was Liu Bei, who we decided to go with the sales career because Liu Bei was very good at packaging himself and advertising himself. And Liu Bei didn't disappoint, as our 10th generation kid scored the highest Gaokao score so far, 664, and he went to Tsinghua University, which is one of the top 2 universities in China, and he became a marketing director, which is the maximum tier seller career, and makes 100 for our next generation here. And his love life was also a success. He was dating Rachel Lee, who was the editor of a fashion magazine, kind of went well with the sales career. And she was only at 60% when we got to the end of the turns, and that's not very high, but luckily for us, probability was in our favor for once, and we actually landed a successful marriage at 60%. And the kid that resulted from their union is Zheng Ji, which is Cao Pi's concubine, And she is known to be a very beautiful girl, so we ended up picking the makeup career for her, and she didn't score as high because of her focus on the makeup career and popularity. She ended up with 602, which is decent, went to Beihang University, and became a top-class show video director, which is the maximum tier for makeup, giving our next generation 80 RMB per turn. And dating proved to be quite easy for her. She maxed out Zhang Zu's probability at 80%. He was a programmer who sold an algorithm for 1 million. Things are going well for this family as they tied the knots and became husband and wife. And their kid was Xiao S, who is a contemporary TV host in Taiwan. She's known for a show called Kangxi Laila, and we decided to honor the host career with her name, and she scored decently well as well, 607, went to Tianjin University, and became a national level host. That's the max tier for the host career, so things went really well here. 80 RMB per turn for our future generation. And the love life is where things became a little tough. So she was dating this actor named Snow Lin, and even though we got the success chance to 80%, once again the game denied us and we ended up with another failure. So we got a generic dad, and the next generation we decided to go with another contemporary figure with someone named Yang Ge Yilang. Now this is a very strange name, and this person happens to be the developer of the game, as we wanted to honor the game producer career with the actual developer who designed the game Chinese Parents, so we picked Yang Ge Yilang's name. He didn't score so well in Gaokao, dropped below 600, went 594, went to Hunan University, and became a very good game designer as he became a game producer, the top tier game designer career, giving only 60 to the next generation, as there's memes throughout the game that game development does not pay well. And his love life, however, turned out quite nice. This is our most astounding success. Now, because the last failure at 80%, we typically don't date very much in the next generation as we become heartbroken. Now, we went with Celine Wong, who was a very sporty girl, and we only got to 33% with her, but somehow we came through. This was our one time, I guess. So perhaps we'll start believing in love going forward, or maybe this is just a hidden buff for the developer's name being used. But anyhow, we got a pretty good wife for our next generation, who turned out to be a daughter, as we named her Guo Nu Wang. Now historically, we're going back to Three Kingdom characters, as Guo Nu Wang was the wife of Cao Pi and the first empress of Wei. And she did very well here. She went the star career path, as Nu Wang means queen, so we kind of want her to become a star. She scored super high, 703 for us, and landed into Tsinghua University, as we mentioned, one of the top universities in China. And her movie star career went okay. She ended up becoming a popular celebrity. You can see that she didn't max it out because she didn't have enough popularity. That is still something quite difficult to gain. But even as a popular celebrity, she gets paid top dollar, 120 for our future generation. And on the love life front, things continue to go well as we dated Tony Ye, a salesman for a real estate business, and we landed 80% here, and we got the success. And that leads us to our generation 15, where we went with Xu Shu, who is the strategist that worked for Liu Bei, who ultimately introduced Zhuge Liang to him. So since he's so good at introducing other people, we decided to give him the agent career so he can find other talents. And he scored decently high, 684. Now it's not above 700, but he still got into Tsinghua University, maybe because his parents are alumni, and he did super well in the agent career as he maxed it out as a famous agent, pays 100 per turn to future generations. And on the love life front, things continue to be smooth sailing. He dated an actual idol, Danny Mu, and got 80% and got the marriage with her. Which leads us to our 16th generation. As we went back to one of the many artist careers in the game, we named her Hua Hua, which means to draw in Chinese. And she became a legendary manga artist. She scored decently high, 680, and instead of going to Tsinghua, she went next door to Peking University. This is the other one of the top 2 universities in China. Both of these are in Beijing, and both of these are kind of next door to each other. Highly competitive schools, and she became kind of the first in the family to go to Peking after 2 of her ancestors went to Tsinghua. And the drawing career doesn't pay well, even if she is legendary. Only 60 per turn for her next generation. Love life continued to swell. She dated Matt Chi, the art guy who turned down one of our ancestors. This time, we got the success with him at 80%. And that leads us to our next generation. Since we have the last name as Hua, we decided to pick a historical character as Hua Tuo. And Hua Tuo here is the famous traveling doctor from Three Kingdoms. He didn't do as hot on his Gaokao, only went 668 there, and he did still land into Peking University, so maybe there is some alumni effects in the game. And he became focused on the physics career, as there's really no doctor career in the game, so we went with one of the more academic ones. Now the money there is cut off as this was the last career on the tree, so the game actually doesn't display it, but it's 30 per turn. It pays very, very poorly, unfortunately, but we did get to the top tier here as we become the reincarnation of Newton himself. In terms of love life, we hit our first snag. We did very, very well with Fanny Su, who was this anime director, which I guess doesn't fit very well with the fact that we are trying to become a famous physicist. And this marriage obviously failed. This is our first big failure, and this is going to lead up to a couple generations where we don't really care about our love life. And that starts with generation 18. We played Yi Ning, which represents Zhang Yining, which is a famous ping pong player from Beijing. And we decided to tackle the sports career again, which we didn't get to complete with Liu Xiang, as we decided to do the girl version of the career, because some career has a different path for girl and boys. And for her, as we are in generation 18, our scores and stats are super high, and we nailed it. We got 747 in our score. We became an Olympic champion, just like Yining was in real life. She went to Peking University, but sadly, only 60 per turn for our next generation. And love life even went well with her, even though our previous one was a failure. Now for girls, it's super easy to get the percentage up, so it didn't take us a lot of effort to get Tony to 80%. He's someone we dated and married before. There's only a few selection of guys you can choose from, and we did get a successful husband here. And that leads us to our penultimate generation here in Cao Song, who historically is Cao Cao's father. At this point in the game, we were hunting for achievement, and one of the achievements that we were working toward is the Playboy achievement, which requires us to get 20% with each of the girls in the game. So we're starting to test that out here. So we tried a lot of dating with every single girl for a little bit to get them to 20%, and we kind of failed here with Cao Song. But he was going for Western cuisine chef, and that part went well. The score was okay, even though we didn't focus on studying because the passive gain is so huge at this point. We got 678 without even trying and landed ourselves in Tsinghua University. Became a Michelin star head chef, pays 100, very, very good career there. And in terms of love life, as we mentioned, we barely dated and we end up getting Phoebe Liu here, 0%. This is the first 0%. We didn't even pick her. We picked one of the generic girls that was offered at 10%, and obviously it failed. And that leads us to our final generation in our first season of Chinese Parents, and that's when we played as Cao Cao, who is obviously Cao Song's son, and he scored 750 out of 750 in Gaokao. Our first perfect score kid, and he went to Peking University with that top score. Now in terms of career, we didn't care about career path at this point. We tried what's called the ordinary career, where you basically don't pick any career path, and he ended up becoming an HR specialist. It pays very poorly at 50, but at least we maxed out everything for ordinary. And we mainly focus on dating all the girl with our time throughout our middle school and high school, trying to get everyone to above 20%. That unfortunately failed. You can see here we ended up with Phoebe at 31%. There was a few girls that was below 20%, so we didn't get the achievement, and the 31% didn't translate into a marriage. So there we have it. We have 20 generations of our Chinese Parents in 20 minutes, but that's not it. For those of you interested in the stats of the game, here is a chart of our generations split by gender, by the wage given by their career, and their dating target, percentage of success chance in dating and marriage, and whether we got married or not, and our Gaokao scores as well. And this is going to wrap it for season 1 of our Chinese Parents. Now, as you know, the purpose of this recap is to launch a new mini-series or a new season of Chinese Parents as we prepare for Chinese New Year's in less than 10 days. And that season, given the fact that this is the year of the cow and the last generation or the father for our new generation is Cao Cao, this new mini-series is going to be called the year of Cao Cao. Now, for those of you who played Dynasty Warriors growing up, you probably heard the bad pronunciation of Cao Cao's name and called him Cao Cao. And since this is the year of the cow or the year of the bull, we are going to be playing a specialty here named the year of Cao Cao as our next son whenever we have him in the game, because it's 50% girls, 50% boys, will be named Cao Cao, and he will try again what Cao Cao wasn't able to do and try to get us the Playboy achievement. Now, there's only 2 achievements in the game that we are missing. There is one where you have to gain all the traits. It's quite hard. We are close. We're like 90 something percent, I believe, or maybe high 80%. So there's a chance we could get that if we play, let's say, another 10 generations, which I don't think we're going to do for this mini-series. I think this mini-series will be maybe 3 generations. We'll try to play at least 1 girl, 1 boy. If we get a girl, we'll call her Niu Niu, which is the Chinese word for Niu being cow. So Cao Cao again, since we are doing year of the Cao Cao here. And if we get a boy, we're going to name him Cao Cao. And the point of this mini-series is to get that Playboy achievement done and also just to revisit the game. The first generation we'll be doing for this mini-series, or technically generation 21, will be a full Let's Play where we will showcase everything in the game for those of you who are new to the game and want to check things out. And then afterward, we're going to do one of those more concise, edited down generations, which was what we've been doing for the later parts of our generations in our previous Let's Plays, where we'll cut things down to the elementary years, the middle school years, and the high school years in 3 weekend episodes. So keep your eye out for these series, and hopefully you guys enjoy this quick recap, and see you guys for the year of the Cao Cao series. Until then, bye!